There's a humongous patch recently, and what happened is that 2 costs are now out of the meta apart from hero augments, but now 4 costs are back. So if you really enjoy fast aiding, if you like playing around 4 costs, this is going to be the patch for you. There's still viable rerolls though, so we'll get to that in just a second. In fact, the top comps right now are all hero augments, so high horsepower Lillia, absolutely incredible. Molten Caramel Rumble, fantastic. Deja Vu Galio, my personal favorite there. And then after that, we have the Zoe Ahri reroll. Funny enough, Zoe Ahri reroll works really well with high horsepower Lillia and Witchy Wallop Poppy because they use the same exact units. But apart from that, we have a bunch of 4 costs that we did not play too much of in the last patch. So Portal Ryze, I think Portal Ryze with a spatula, one of the strongest comps in the game, and people could just hard force it. I've seen it happen too many times. Frost Pyro Olaf, another great comp that needs a spatula. I guess it doesn't need it, but it helps a ton. These 2 comps with a spatula, you maybe bump it up a half a tier or even like a full tier. And then if you don't have a spatula, the 4 costs you should default to is probably going to be Kalista in like a horizontal Kalista build. Some people refer to this as Flex Kalista or Kalista Flex. After that, we have Built Different, which is going to be a 4 cost augment. Multistriker Kalista still works. It's just built a little differently than horizontal Kalista. By the way, if you ever are wondering what to build on each of your champions, I am going to be coming out with an item guide this weekend and a charm guide as well. But let's say you don't like Kalista. Let's say you don't get the Frost Pyro start. Pyro Varus is also pretty decent on its own with 4 Blaster. Witchy Wallop Poppy, we talked about that a little bit. You just play like Zoe Ahri reroll with that. Zap Attack Blitzcrank, very strong 1 cost hero augment. Kogmaw reroll. Got nerfed quite a bit, or like it fell down quite a bit, but it's still decent in certain spots. There are a lot of weird hunter rerolls where you play stuff like Wukong with it. It's really fun to do. Speaking of Wukong, the next one is Spin to Win Wukong. Very strong augment there. Like pretty much every hero augment except for Sweet Tooth Nunu are pretty much like pretty good to take in most situations if you have any semblance of a spot for them. But after that, we have Flex, Karma, Gwen, Fiora. I kind of combined this comp all into one because I feel like you just play whoever you hit, and they do share quite a few items with each other. Spider Queen Elise, very decent. Warwick reroll with the Corrupted Scepter, pretty decent as well. Akali Nilah dropped down a little bit, but it's still decent in certain spots, I'd say. Reroll Veigar. This one's actually like, I think, a sleeper comp. Maybe it rises up a bit in the future. I've seen a bunch more people playing this. You go like Vex and Veigar, and once you get them 3-star, it's pretty hard to stop. The issue is trying to get there. It was really difficult to do that in the previous patch because all the 2 cost rerolls kind of overtook all the 3 cost ones. But since the timing's a bit different, Veigar does have a better spot right now. Sweet Tooth Nunu, decent, nerfed a ton, but it's still playable if you have a bunch of tank items to start the game with. Eldritch Mages, if you get School Mascot, fantastic. And then we have Sugarcraft to round out the A tier. B tier, we have Multistriker Kassadin. I wouldn't play this. It got nerfed a ton. I feel like it was undeserved. A lot of people down in the comments said they didn't believe me, and they said like, oh, it's still going to be good. But I feel like this comp is like a shadow of its former self. Too tanky, probably pass on that for now. The Hui and Ezreal combo definitely leaves a lot to be desired. Fast 9ing is okay. I wouldn't say it's bad. It really depends on what portal it is. If you're on Scuttle Puddle, like go ahead and fast 9. But the thing is, you might as well play for level 8 instead because there's so many good 4 cost comps and you just want to stabilize there. Scholar Ryze, while still decent, I prefer Portal Ryze right now. Actually, I'm gonna bump this up to the A tier. I don't think it's fair to put one Ryze in the S tier and another Ryze in the B tier because overall, like sometimes you switch between the 2 a bit depending on whether you get a ton of portals or not. I'm actually going to slip it up between the Kogmaw and Spin to Win Wukong. I think I just forgot to move it from before. Then we followed up with a bunch of unplayable comps. Do not click on Syndra. You may have clicked her a lot last patch, but do not click her right now. Really awful champion. There are maybe like 1 out of 50 games where you might play her, but there are better things to kind of go for in most cases. But let's get into how to play each and every one of these comps. We're going to start off with Horsepower Lillia. This one is going to be Bloodthirster, Ionic, and Crown Guard. The items are pretty non-negotiable on Lillia, and those are going to just give her a solid mix of tankiness, damage dealing, and life stealing. And it works really well with the Zoe and Ahri in the backline. Again, we talked about the Zoe Scholar or Ahri Scholar build. Ahri is a bit better now because they kind of changed how these 2 units work, but your main carry is going to be Lillia in the early game. But then after that, Zoe or Ahri, whoever you 3-star, is going to be the best for that. So what you want to do is do a 1 cost reroll, get Lillia 3-star, and then see if you have a lot of Zoes. If you do, go for Zoe 3-star. If not, you level up, go for Ahri 3-star. Once you get these 3 units set up, it's like GG already. Like, holy cow. High horsepower Lillia, completely bonkers augment. It's averaging a 4.0 right now in Master Plus. Let's see, Diamond Plus 4.03. So like pretty much at a lot of ratings, it's around 4.0. Very, very powerful stuff considering how easy it is to play too. So it's like, not only is it good, it's also not hard to do. One thing to note, a mistake I see people doing when playing this comp is they think Lillia is a fairy unit, which she is. I'm not saying she's not, but they put the fairy crown on Lillia. I'm here to say that you don't need to do that. You more so rely on the Bastion. So just put 3 regular items on her, and that's going to be good to go from there. What do you want for augments? So obviously you want high horsepower. Don't play this otherwise. And after that, any of the Bastion augments are good. Like, what's this one called? Raid Boss. That one's very powerful. Getting Giant and Mighty is really good because you get a bunch of 3-star units. Anything that gives Radiant items is generally pretty good on these types of comps. And then any reroll augments such as like Misconnections, great for getting all these to 3-star. Featherweights, things like that are going to be perfect. But if you want to check out the full guide, head on over to bunnymuffins.lol/meta, where we update this tier list every single Friday. But let's talk about Molten Caramel Rumble. Absolutely bonkers comp. Again, pretty static build. People are just going Bloodthirster, Jeweled Gauntlet, and Rabadon's Death Cap without too much variation on the Rumble. Obviously, you're going to have some games where you can't get perfect items. Maybe you have a Handed Justice instead of a Bloodthirster, but if you're able to pick and choose your items, which you probably should whenever you pick a hero augment, these are the 3 that you want to go. Since you're rolling for Rumble, you're going to do a 2-cost reroll. So you're going to slow roll at level 6 and maybe stabilize a bit before that. And then you're going to pair this with Galio, Tristana, and Zilean. So Tristana 3 is going to be your secondary carry. Galio could be your secondary tank if you really need one. I prefer Mordekaiser a bit more, but sometimes you get Galio 3 a lot easier because, I mean, he's a 2-cost after all. So if you do have a lot of extra items, throw them on either of those 2. Tristana in the back is going to have the Queen's item and the Rage Blade and the Infinity Edge. Since you have a very strong front line, I find that Tristana does have enough time to kind of stack the Rage Blade, but you could also put a Spear of Shojin on Trist. That also works pretty decently. For Vanguard, though, is going to be key here because Rumble is a Vanguard unit and he just needs to be able to tank enough for him to kind of burn everyone down, because this augment is just really bonkers. And same rules for all these other hero augments for the other augments that they want. You want like Radiant items on them because it gets them like that much more powerful. Also, Find Your Center is really good. And then Featherweight's also really nice as well. But pretty easy to play comp again and also doing very, very well. Let's check the data on that. Caramel. Okay, 3.97 in Platinum. Let's see Master Plus. It's going to be 4.0 or 3.99. So also really, really good. Let's talk about Deja Vu Galio. So Galio works a bit differently from the other hero augments because he turns from a melee champ to a ranged champ. So instead of buying all the or building all the bruiser frontline items, what you want instead is 2 Rage Blades and a Hextech Gunblade. I've seen people force Deja Vu Galio and then they don't have any Rage Blades and then they pick Pandora's items on stage 3. That's also fine too. Whatever you got to do, just make sure you get 2 Rage Blades on Galio. Non-negotiable items, even more so than all the other comps we went through. Like, you could replace some of Rumble's items, you're not going to do too badly. You could replace some of Lilia's items, you're not going to do too badly, even though I like the 3 that I put out the most. But with Galio, you absolutely need double Rage Blade, and then preferably 3rd item Hextech Gunblade. Like, the difference between this and everything else is like so astronomical that I wouldn't even try the other stuff. But since you have Galio, you want to run the Vanguards. It's pretty simple to do. Pretty much the same thing as you had before. And then whoever you 3-star, whether it be Rumble, Mordekaiser, or Vex, put your tank items on that person. And then have like Nami as a secondary carry in the later parts of the game. Throw like Static Shib Morello on her. Maybe like a blue buff to get her to cast more. And you're going to be good to go after that. Pretty much same rules on the augments and like same reroll pattern. So all these hero augments are really easy to go through. And Zoe Reroll, it's pretty much the same comp as everything else we went through already. Let's scroll up a little bit. So we have like Zoe and Ahri in the back. We have Poppy Lillia. We got 4 Scholar. Like, it's pretty much the same. I think I just added in one more Arcana unit just for fun or something like that. But you can definitely play this without any of the hero augments. Just make sure you have like a really good reroll augment, such as Upgraded Adventure. That is like a hand-picked augment for this comp. Prismatic Ticket, also really good. And then follow the same 1-cost reroll pattern. If you haven't checked out the leveling video yet, I highly recommend doing that. But another thing that this comp needs is a lot of blue buffs. Both Zoe and Ahri really like blue buff. And then getting like a Nashor's or ability power item works really well. They share most of the items together. I think on Ahri, I prefer like Hat and Jeweled Gauntlet, but overall it's like pretty much the same thing. As for your tank, you do either Lillia or Poppy 3-star. Whoever you 3-star first gets the item. You know how it's like early bird gets the picking, so whoever you 3-star first, that's whoever you dump items on. Next one up we have is going to be Portal Ryze. So this one I adjusted a little bit because the Portal Ryze comp uses a lot of weird flex units. So I recommend only playing this if you get Portal Emblem. I'm not saying it's not playable otherwise, but it makes it a ton easier because you don't have to fish for Nora or anything like that. And getting from 3 to 6 Portal is actually pretty difficult without it. So that's why I only do this if I already have the Portal Emblem or if I have a spatula on my bench and I'm looking to build it. But pretty much after you throw in Taric and Ryze as your main tank and main DPSer, you throw in all the other Portal units, Galio, Jace, Kassadin, Zoe, Ezreal, and Nora. But then you have one more slot to fill. So what should that be? If you do have Nora, I'd like adding in Nami. That gives you Mage because you have Galio, Nora, and Nami. And Nami's a great support unit. You could throw like a Morella Namicon on her, and she's going to be CCing a ton of people and applying a lot of damage to a lot of people. If you manage to get one of those random legendary units such as Diana or Morgana, pretty decent to pair up, throw the portal spat on all 4 of these units and you're going to be good to go. However, in most cases, you're going to be playing around Nasus because oftentimes you don't get Nora early and you're probably not hitting Diana or Morgana reliably. So Nasus is going to be a great holder of the Portal Emblem, and you get the added bonus of griefing every other comp that wants Nasus, which is pretty much all the other 4-cost comps. So that's why I like going for Nasus the most whenever I play the Portal comp. You grief everyone else. If you get him, great. If you don't, just switch the items onto whoever you get instead. And yeah, you don't have to do too much after that. There are a lot of flex units for Portal because you run so many units that don't really share any synergies that you could run like a Shapeshifter like Nasus, you could run like a Vanguard like Tahm Kench, Bastion like Diana, or even like a Shen. Morgana, you get Witchcraft. And then of course Nami with the mages. You could also run Vex if you want like a poor person's Nami. That also works too. But do Fast 8 for this comp. A lot of people are going to be struggling if they've never done Fast 8 before because last patch we didn't really do that too much. In order to Fast 8, you need to be able to save a lot of HP or get an Econ Augment at the start of the game. So I'm going to talk a lot more about augments because I think this patch in particular, augments are super, super important. So sometime this weekend, I'll probably come out with an augment guide to kind of help everyone out a little bit there. But essentially, whenever you do a Fast 8 comp, you generally want to take an econ augment such as like Epoch or Slammin because it really helps get you to your stage 4 roll down and actually getting quality upgrades. A lot of times I see people try to Fast 8 and they roll down, they get like a 1-star Ryze and a 1-star Taric and they're like, that was pretty good. I rolled 20 gold and like, I'm lucky I got that. But you don't want to rely on luck, right? You want to roll down like 40 gold or like 50 gold when you do these roll downs. And sometimes you get like a Nasus 2 or like a Ryze 2 and things like that. The reason why other people get that and you might not do it all the time is because they're generally rolling with more gold. I'm not saying it's guaranteed by any means, but if you average out like all your games or something like that, if you roll with 50 gold compared to 20 gold, you're going to be hitting a lot more upgrades than the other person. But again, you really want Spatula for this comp or like Portal Emblem, whatever you want to call it. And then just do standard leveling, play all the Portal units, 8 Portal, completely bonkers busted. Next one up we have is Frostfire Olaf Varus, my favorite comp of the set. This one is going to be, again, Spatula reliant. So having +1 Frost or Pyro is really, really good. I prefer Pyro. Pyro gives you like a higher execute at 5 Pyro. I believe it goes from like 12% to 18%. So it is like fantastic. It's probably like the best spatula I think in the game. And it makes your Olaf just completely kill everything. I've seen people put it on Diana or Hui also. They do really well with Pyro Spat too. But the base of the comp is something like 5 Frost and 3 Pyro. And then whatever you spatula, you can just either go to 7 Frost or 5 Pyro depending on what you get. What I think is so funny about this comp is that they share so many traits. Like, look at this. We have like perfect synergies, but they don't even take up that much space, even though I'm running 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 units. And it's just like a very clean, easy to complement each other type of comp. But Varus is going to be the carry in the backline, Olaf in the front, bruiser items on Olaf, AD carry items on Varus, tank items on Nasus or Swain, and then ability power items on Diana or Hui, depending on what you have upgraded at the time. Obviously, 2-star Diana, put the items on Diana. if you have like a 2-star Hui and a 1-star Varus, which is going to happen in a bunch of your games because like Varus is pretty contested, you might want to itemize AP on Hui a little bit. What I really like to do is have like a Spear of Shojin, drop it on Hui, build it early, and use that as kind of like my early to mid game carry. Then eventually you might get a remover and then you swap the items over onto Varus. That's just one way to play it, but there are of course a lot of other ways too. But yeah, you want to fast 8 for this because you're looking for 4 costs like Nasus, Olaf, Varus, very critical people. And you can stabilize in the mid game with like Swain 2, Hui 2, things like that. So it's going to depend on like the pace of the game. Next comp up we have is going to be Horizontal Kalista. This one's going to be like a deep comp in terms of like touching into a lot of traits. What people mean when they say like vertical or horizontal, like portal comp is going to be a vertical comp because you're going into like 8 or 10 portal, whereas a horizontal comp is where you go like wide. So you get like a bunch of little traits. You only go like 3 Multistriker on Kalista instead of like 7. And you're pretty much flexing a lot of units in your team. So whenever you're playing Kalista with only 3 Multistriker, you always want to get a Rage Blade on her. If you have 7 Multistriker, you can get away with not having a Rage Blade, but with 3, you definitely need one. I'd say it's mandatory. And then here you could kind of flex between any secondary carry and a bunch of tank. The most common one is going to be Fiora. People are just running Fiora in their builds because she doesn't really need any traits to get going. She's like you could kind of treat her as a threat unit even, if anyone remembers that set from a long time ago. You just play her, get her 2-star, put items on her. Even without any synergies, she does normally pretty well. But it doesn't have to be Fiora, it could be any type of secondary carry, and then, which essentially just means some 4-cost unit that deals damage. And then after that, you pair it with a bunch of tanks. So who do you want running as your tanks? You could do Preservers, you could do Bastion, you could do Shapeshifters. You could probably even do Vanguards, but the first 3 I mentioned are the most popular right now. This board is using like 3 Preserver and I think 2 Shapeshifter, but of course it could be mixed and matched depending on what you 2-star. How do you decide what units to put in your team? Well, again, it's going to come down to who you're hitting. So if you're rolling down and before you do your roll down, you have like 2 Rakans, you're probably going to be playing around Rakan and Preserver. So that's when you want to hold on to all the Preserver units as you roll. However, if you have like a bunch of Nasuses, then of course go for the Nasus, pick up a random Shapeshifter along the way, maybe even get up to 4 Shapeshifter in some cases, and then run that instead. If you get a Taric 2-star, of course play Hecarim because he's a Bastion and a Multistriker, so he works especially well with Kalista. There are a lot of builds where you go Kalista plus Bastion instead of what you see here, but pretty much just throw your tank items on whoever you have 2-star and throw in random synergies with them too. For augments, Little Buddies is really nice because you play like a couple of Little Buddies, Zilean and Akali, and then you play a bunch of 4 and 5 cost units. You don't really play any 3 costs, so it makes it pretty worth it. And then of course stuff like Epic, Shopping Spree, whatever can get you to level 8, upward mobility as quickly as possible and as safely as possible is going to be really good for this comp. Next comp up we have are the A tiers. We're going to start off with Built Different. Built Different is a very good augment. However, you do need to fast 8 with it, so I do recommend going for this on econ portals, such as like gold subscription to get you there, because sometimes it can be a little difficult to roll with like 50 gold on stage like 4-2 or 4-5 if you don't have like perfect econ at the start of the game. And Built Different works really well because you could use almost any unit to kind of be your carry. Like it doesn't have to be the people you see here. Instead of Fiora, you could run Gwen. Instead of Kalista, you can run Varus. Of course, you do have to take out Nasus because they're both Pyro. Your main tank could be like Nasus, Taric. You could run a bunch of multiple Tahm Kenches. That's really popular to do. Tahm Kench doesn't really need any items, so people like running multiple copies of him and then focusing your items on like whoever is your carry. But pretty much just build flexible items, and then whoever you hit 2-star, put the items on them as you get to level 8 and play all the 4-cost units. Pretty easy comp. You play it literally the same exact way you have in the past, except you just buy new types of units. Next comp up we have is Multistriker Kalista. It's another version of Kalista. It's still very good. I like this one a lot, but it's a little hard to play. I like playing this if I get Multistriker emblem. It makes things a lot easier to hit 7 because it's just like playing TFT on easy mode. You don't have to hit Camille anymore. Of course, you still want Camille eventually, but you don't have to grief your game for it. But essentially, this build just works out really well because Kalista is really good in the meta right now, and if you stack whatever her traits are when a unit's good, you're gonna do some good things. Pair it off with like some Bastion, so you could do like Shen plus Hecarim for Bastion, and then Shen's also a Pyro with Akali. Pyro buff gives attack speed to your whole team, so that's pretty nice too. It's another way to buff your Kalista. But if you ever start the game with like Press the Attack or Multistriker Crest, go ahead and just hard force this comp. Pretty decent to do. Next one up we have is Pyro Varus. This is a variation of the Frost comp. I'd say it's a bit worse. You go for Blaster in this build, but it's still pretty dangerous. You go for this when you don't have a spatula, because it's not as reliant on that type of stuff. Or if you get like +1 Blaster spat, that one's pretty good too. But sometimes I find it hard to go deep into Frost because you have to run a lot of like mediocre units. But when you go for Pyro Varus, you're still running mediocre units such as Ezreal and Hui, but you end up doing a lot more damage on your Varus, which is the unit you actually care about. So if you ever hit an early Smolder, this is one version to consider, especially if you don't have any like Frost or Pyro spatulas. Of course, Pyro spats are still very welcome in this build. I just find them to be a little bit better in the Frost build. Of course, any comp is good when you get 2-star Nasus plus some backline damage dealer. So this comp is a bit lower compared to the other builds because again, it's very reliant on Nasus. But again, like every comp that's reliant on Nasus like needs Nasus. It's just forecast lottery. It is what it is, you know? Witchy Wallop Poppy, this is the same exact stuff as the Zoe Reroll build, and also the same as the high horsepower Lillia, except you like switch the carry. You go from Lillia to Poppy. I'd say the only like major change obviously is going to be the items. Poppy is an attack damage unit, and since you don't get any attack damage from Bastion, you really want to get a Sterix gauge on your Poppy. It's like the best item on her, and Bloodthirster also really solid on him too. Next one up we have is going to be Zap Attack Blitzcrank. Regular tank items on Blitzcrank plus an Ionic Spark I think is my favorite combo. You could pair him with like a Veigar 3 or some sort of secondary carry. Some people use Kogmaw, they go like the Kogmaw Hunter build with this, but whatever you do, like just make sure you have some secondary carry with Blitzcrank. I like 5 Honeymancy, some people like 3. Both of them work. It really depends on what units you're hitting, but if I have like 2 Honeymancer units that I'm itemizing, such as like Blitzcrank and then Veigar or Kogmaw, I generally like going 5 Honeymancy because you're just like digging deeper into that trait. The only downside is that you have to run a stupid Ziggs, and Ziggs is just completely awful. But if you do get a +1 Honeymancy, you could drop it on someone else and get to 5 Honeymancy that way instead. Put Yuumi on Blitzcrank. It's great in the late game if you are able to get Nora, but of course if you don't, just play like a Nami or Vex to get 3 mages in, because mage is important if you are running the Veigar carry. But pretty simple build, just another 1-cost reroll hero augment type of build. The next comp up we have is going to be Kogmaw and Jinx Hunter reroll. A couple of different versions of this comp right now. The most popular one is going to be with Wukong, where you focus on Jinx and Wukong. A very powerful build. You just go like the triple Stoneplate build on Wukong and then build a bunch of AD items on Jinx. The thing about Jinx is that the most important item on her is going to be Rageblade and Runons. Rageblade because she just auto attacks a lot, so like what item gives attack speed? Like it's going to be Rageblade. And then Runons is really good because whenever she gets a takedown, she gets a nice little bonus, so she works especially well with Runons because you get to hit other units and then hopefully share in some of the takedown fun. Kogmaw is decent as like another carry if you are re-rolling a bunch of stuff and hit Kogmaw. Of course, Olaf, if you get him instead, itemize him. Obviously, you're not going to get this many items in your game. Like, how many do we have here? 12 in the first picture? Like, impossible in most cases, right? But whoever you 3-star, or if you get a 2-star Olaf, just itemize them that way, and the main units you care about are going to be Wukong and Jinx in this version here. After that, throw in a bunch of preservers. They're going to be pretty good to kind of solidify your team, so like Rakan, Zillion, Bard, Morgana if you get her, but just level up, throw those units in once you get a chance. Next up we have is a standard Kogmaw Jinx Tristana build with Nunu as the main tank. Pretty much plays the same way, except you want to do a 2-cost reroll instead of a 3-cost reroll as you see up here, and then you play mostly around like Kogmaw, Tristana, and Nunu. But if you don't get Tristana and you get Jinx instead, then obviously itemize your Jinx. If you get Rumble 3-star, put some tank items on him. And then the last one we have here is kind of a mix between the two. We have the 4-Hunter build with some other random nonsense in there, such as Diana and Blitzcrank, so that you get 4-Hunter, drop the blasters, but still get Vanguard and Bastion for your front line. All these versions work. It really just depends on what you're hitting that game, so just keep that in mind whenever you're playing any versions of these builds. But pretty simple to play. I'm making it seem harder than it is. Just like tunnel on one of these comps. Like you'll have signs that you'll know of like when to do it. For example, if you have a bunch of stone plates, think about playing Wukong, especially if you get a bunch of them early on. If you just have like a ton of Kogmaws, ton of Nunus, then do like the middle version here. And then the third one, if you're not getting any Tristanas, it might be worth considering going for this build instead because this one utilizes all the 4 hunters. So if you can't find any Tristanas, you're not like completely screwed or anything. But next team comp we have up is Spin to Win Wukong. This one is going to be just like playing a bunch of Preservers and Arcana and finding some sort of carry in the backline. In this picture here, I have Bard. Bard isn't the best unit to use as a carry in the backline. You could use Jinx instead, like in the image we have up here. That's why I kind of have these two team comps together. But you could also use something like Karma and use Incanters instead, because Wukong just like lives forever, especially with the spin to win augment. And you just throw Stoneplate on him, throw BT, Sterix on him, and he just spins and he like kind of kills everything. Some people solo frontline him, some people do like a setup like this where you have a bunch of people on the front line and then Wukong on the edge. It really is going to depend on the stage of the game you're in. In like the super duper late game, you cannot put Wukong solo frontline. Sometimes he does die out, but early on in the game, if you get him 3-star early and you want to like snowball the game really hard, like having him in the front, teams can't kill him sometimes before they really power spike up. But essentially what you want to do is find some sort of carry in the backline, preferably another 3-cost unit. That's why Jinx is really popular. And if you can't get that, like Karma's pretty decent. One uses attack speed items, another person uses mana items, and then just replace the Arcanas with whatever complementary synergies you need. So if you need Hunter, take out Ahri and Xerath for like Jinx plus another Hunter. If you need Incanter, same thing, except with Karma and maybe like a Cassiopeia or Syndra. Pretty simple comp to play, just do 3-cost reroll, and of course you need to get the spin to win augment. It only shows up on stage 3, so don't like go gunning for it like right from the get-go. Next one up we have is Flex, Karma, Fiora, and Gwen. So this one covers both like the general comp where you don't need a spatula and the one where you do get one, where you play Witchcraft, Fiora, and Karma. My favorite one is probably just going to be the standard one. You could fit so many random things in this build. You don't have to play Karma, you don't have to itemize your Fiora, you don't have to, you could put like a Thieves Glove on her, for example, and you also don't have to play Karma. Like you just play whoever you get, and hopefully you get 2 out of the 3. So what ends up happening is that Fiora and Gwen share a lot of items, and then Gwen and Karma share a lot of items. So for example, blue buff can be built on both Karma and Gwen, and of course any AP item can work on Gwen too. Any of the frontline bruiser items work really well on both Fiora and Gwen, with the exception of like Sterix Gauge, but like Titan's Resolve, really good on Gwen. Well, not really good, it's like pretty good. Bloodthirster, very good on Gwen. Edge of Night, very good on Gwen. So like there's a lot of different things you could do in this build based on these 3 champions, and then you just throw a bunch of preservers to kind of buff them up. Maybe some Witchcraft if you are feeling a little tricky that day. I don't know what I could have thought about a joke there, but whatever. I can't think of something more clever. But essentially when you're playing this comp, you want to lean into it if you have like a lot of item augments. The reason why is because you have so many units to itemize. You itemize like potentially up to 3 different carries and a tank. Like you want to make Rakan or Morgana your main tank. And you could even run like the Witchcraft version where you run Nico and Nasus, and then you're like looking for Nasus instead. So there's so many different things you could do with this Flex Karma build. Essentially, you just go fast 8 through like win streaking. You have like 80-90 health in stage 4, maybe sack 1 or 2 rounds, maybe roll down on stage 4-2 or 4-5. You're at like 50 life by that point, assuming you lost all those rounds already, and then you just roll down, hit a disgusting board, and hopefully win out from there. After that, you go 9, add in some legendary unit that shares some random trait with you, and then boom, you're probably going to get first place in a lot of cases. This build is pretty solid, but maybe the Kalista Flex build is a bit better than Karma Flex right now, just because of the nerfs that happened to Karma. And Kalista, I think she was untouched. I'm not 100% sure, but she's much better because all the Kassadin players aren't stealing her. But now you have to compete with other Kalista players, which is kind of funny. Next comp up we have is Spider Queen Elise, another hero augment. BT Archangel's Warmog's very solid on her, but you could honestly build almost anything on Elise. You could go like full tank. I've even seen full AP work, but I don't recommend that. But like Crown Guard also works too. But essentially you just run 6 Shapeshifter, find some random secondary carry in the backline. In this picture here, we're using Varus and Smolder, and just go from there. That's all you really have to do. Not too complicated of a comp. Next one up we have is going to be Corrupted Vampiric Scepter Warwick. Only do this with the artifact, of course, and then build like Quicksilver, Titans, or like a Rage Blade. Those 3 items are going to be the ones you pair with this. And then you could go either 7 Frost. I've even seen people go Vanguard, but I think the Frost version works a bit better because you get to run it with Twitch. Twitch is going to be in the back line and hopefully helping out Warwick a little bit as you roll down for this, because Warwick does not actually have a hero augment. He just needs the Corrupted Scepter item. And then, of course, you could transition into some sort of regular Frost build as well. Lots of different options there once you hit. Next one up we have is Akali Nilah. This one is going to be just like a 2-cost reroll build. I feel very weird about this build though. It either like auto wins everything thing or it just auto loses. It really depends on like Akali jump and kill RNG. Like sometimes she just kills everything and you're like, wow, this comp is completely bonkers. And then other times you're like, Akali just jumps in, dies, and didn't kill anyone. And then you're like, she's 3-star, she's got 3 items on her. What happened? And unfortunately, that's just like the risk you gotta take when you play Akali. It's like cost of doing business, you know? But luckily right now, this build isn't suffering too hard because normally Kassadin players stole all your Akalis, but now no one goes Kassadin anymore, so you can get Akali 3-star pretty reliably in a lot of cases. And then Nilah, no one goes for Nilah, so she's pretty free there. Just put frontline bruiser items on both of them, and yeah, they'll do pretty decently. Next one up we have is Reroll Veigar. Excited about this one because this is what I identified as like the sleeper comp or whatever. Because 3-cost reroll might be back. It might take a little more time for it to get there because as more people play Jinx, as more people play Wukong, Veigar and Vex become much easier to roll for. So what you want to do is get some sort of reroll augment because 3-cost reroll requires a ton of gold. So you know how sometimes when you play 1-cost reroll, you don't need like an econ augment to hit them. It's because it's like really cheap, right? But 3-cost, you have to get to level 7, which costs a ton, and you have to roll like a crap ton of gold to hit them. So only do this if you have like a lot of duplicators or if you have like a ton of gold at the start of the game or you're running like March of Progress or something like that. But essentially, all you need to do is get both these units 3-star, put decent items on them. I recommend at least 1 Gargoyle Stoneplate on Vex and then just 2 random tank items. Crown Guard's probably my favorite second tank item, but literally anything will do. And then do blue buff, Gunblade, and Jeweled Gauntlet on Veigar because he gets AP from charms, so you don't really need to build a hat on him. Not that hat's bad, but it's just not required. And then he just kills a bunch of stuff. And Nami is great for support unit. Throw like a red buff and a static shiv on her, and she's going to be reducing magic resist, going to be applying anti-heal to everyone. It's all really fine and dandy. The units in the middle here are not as important. You really just need 5 mage somehow, and this is one easy way to get it. Run Arcana if you have the room for it. But the main base of the comp is really just 5 mage. Next comp up we have is going to be Sweet Tooth Nunu. Hero augment, but for 2 costs. This one, you just want Nunu in the front line with BT and then 2 tank items. Veigar in the back is pretty decent, but you could also do Kogmaw, so you could copy the exact Kogmaw build that we saw before. But you're running like a really jacked up Nunu, so pretty decent augment. It's okay. It's averaging like a 4.6 or like 4.59. So there definitely are better options, but it definitely is still viable if you're taking it in good spots. I feel like people are overtaking Sweet Tooth Nunu because last patch it was like one of the best comps in the game. So this patch people might still like, they forgot it got nerfed or something like that. I think that's affecting the data a little bit. But next comp up we have is Eldritch Mages. If you get School Mascot, that's pretty much the only time I would play this. The days of farming Syndra are like long gone. I wouldn't really do that too much if I were you. But you can still run this with Nami, get School Mascot, get some Mages. It's still decent. It's just seen better days. Next comp up we have is Sugarcraft. So we added Sugarcraft this week. You really only want to play this if you get Sugarcraft Spatula early. Like I would not play it otherwise. So if you take Branching Out, which gives you a random emblem, and you happen to get Sugarcraft, all right, go for it, you know? But it's a really fun comp, but I just wouldn't go for this from the start of the game and try to force this because it's really hard to get to 6 Sugarcraft. The difference between 4 and 6 Sugarcraft is like astronomical. So what you really want to do is set everything up and get to 6 Sugarcraft as fast as possible with the extra spat item. It's still hard to do because you need to hit Gwen, and she's a 4-cost unit, so it's hard to kind of get to that point. Luckily for you, the way to play Sugarcraft is to slam as many items as possible. So whatever item you have that's buildable, whether it be a tank item, a damage item, whatever, there is going to be a user for it down the line. Like Fiora and Gwen use all the bruiser items, Gwen uses AP items, Jinx uses attack speed or attack damage items, and then anyone in the front can use a tank item. So whatever items you get in the early game, just slam them, put them on someone, and be happy. Because you get to stack your Sugarcraft cake layers much earlier when you do that, and you get to save HP. The goal of this comp is to save HP, so Tiny Titans and Tiniest Titans are both pretty decent. Apart from that, anything that gives you emblems is really good. And once you get your cash out, you can use that to stabilize your game and hopefully go from there. Really, really fun comp, but again, only play this if you get Sugarcraft Spatula. I am not responsible for lost LP for people who did it otherwise. But going on to the B tier, like Kassadin, yeah, it's just seen better days. I wouldn't play too many of the B tiers right now. Fast 9ing, I'll make an exception for, because if you do get like insane econ at the start of the game, you still can fast 9, play a bunch of legendaries. They're all very good, but it's kind of hard to get to that point, especially when fast 8ing so good. So when people have 2-star, Kalista, 2-star Ryze, and they're beating you down because you have 1-star Xerath, 1-star Diana, 1-star Morgana, like, yeah, it's not very fun, you know? But if you have like turbo amounts of gold and you have 2-star Xerath, 2-star Diana, 2-star Morgana with items, you're gonna smack them back even harder. So this one really depends on what augments you get at the start of the game and what portal it is, because like gold subscription, crab rave, things like that really help this comp out a ton, because you need a lot of gold. It's probably like one of the most expensive comps in the game, and yeah, you don't want to get like pooped on by the other players. I forgot to go over Scholar Ryze. We're going to do that right now. Essentially, if you're going for portal and you're building a bunch of Ryze items at the start of the game, you don't get a portal spatula and you're like, what should I do instead? I built Rageblade Archangels. Like, who uses that combination, right? Only Ryze. There's not many other champions that use that, right? Well, you could still play Ryze. You just play them in a Scholar build. You just put 4 Scholars in the back. In this picture, we have Ryze, Milio, Zoe, and Bard. But you could replace Milio with Ahri before you get that. And then just throw random tanks in the front. 3 portal is still decent, so you want to build around Taric. He's just a solid 4-cost tank. And then just play like the regular, like the usual suspects. You get Rakan, you get Preserver with Bard, and then you could throw in like Nasus, Nico, whatever. Like you get Witchcraft with like Zoe and Nico. It's still like okay. It's only 2 Witchcraft, you know, but it's still okay. And the Nasus, anytime you get Nasus 2, you grief everyone else, and then he's also just really strong on his own. He only needs like 2 Shapeshifter to like almost be unkillable in a lot of cases. He's just like the best tank by far, I think, at 4 cost, because all the other 4-cost tanks, they have like a lot of utility, so that's how they kind of balance out the game. But yeah, I wouldn't play too many of the B and C tier comps. Don't even touch Lillia. Don't even touch Katarina. A lot of people are like, oh, Katarina got buffed, let's play her. No, false alarm, she's doing awfully. Let's check out the data. We'll go to champions over here. What's her name? Katarina. Okay, like at 3-star, she averages a 3.88, which is okay, but getting a 3-cost 3-star is very, very difficult. Like, she's kind of middle of the pack. I feel like people are like over forcing it as well, but if we compare it to like Veigar, he's 3-starred much more often. As you can see here, like 60% 3-star rate versus 35%, and he also does better. And no one else is playing 3-cost reroll, apart from like Jinx, but Jinx is played in a lot of other comps as well, so you can't like really rely on her in my opinion, because all the Hunter Wukong players kind of use her. So it's like Katarina, like she can work, I just wouldn't play it right now. Maybe I'll shift it up to B tier. I don't think she deserves C tier that badly, but there are for sure much better comps to go for. So I'm gonna move her to B tier instead of C tier, but like don't go out of your way and like force Katarina, because she's really not at the state where she really should be at yet. Maybe just like a little bump more. Like, it's not her fault. Like, all 3-cost reroll is feeling a little bad right now, so it's just like a super situational build. It's like Veigar barely made it into the A tier. Wukong, he has like the spin to win augment. Do you really count that? And then like the Jinx builds, like she's mainly played in the Kogmaw builds, and it's like if you don't hit Kogmaw, you go Jinx. So it's like they're all kind of in there, or like kind of viable, but they're not actually like a fully dedicated comp, I think, in my opinion. But Katarina, she really needs to like be fully built around herself, and as a 3-cost, it's just really hard to do that. So hopefully this kind of helps you out. Again, I'm going to be coming out with an augment guide sometime this weekend, because yeah, it's really augment dependent in this patch, because all the hero augments are really key, and like all the +1 emblems are really key. So you just need to get one of those, and if you don't, unlucky, you have to like flex some horizontal Kalista or something like that and hope for the best. But that's gonna be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video. We have item guide and augment guide, and I think a charm guide coming out this weekend, so keep on the lookout for that.